Hi, I'm Ben Twining. I'm a senior research scientist and the vice president for education at Bigelow Laboratory in East Booth Bay, Maine.
And I'm Bess Koffman. I'm an associate professor of earth sciences here at Colby College. For the past 4 years, we've been working together on the Volcanic Blooms project. So a volcanic eruption happens. That ash makes its way out over the ocean. And we're really interested in understanding the impacts that the ash has as it falls into the seawater.
Volcanic ash is full of all sorts of microscopic minerals like iron that phytoplankton need to grow. When that volcanic ash is blown into the ocean, hours after the eruption or even years later, it can stimulate blooms of phytoplankton. Understanding the relationship between ash and phytoplankton on the microscopic scale can help us to understand the ecosystem impacts of these volcanic blooms.
We're also interested in learning how the composition of ash from different volcanoes might impact organisms in the ocean, like phytoplankton. But before we can measure the geochemical composition, we have to head out on the ocean to collect samples at sea.
Collecting samples is a bit of a tricky process. After all, rust from the ship and metal particles that come from our equipment could influence our results. We've built in a few layers of protection to avoid this kind of contamination. Here we are aboard our research vessel, the Bowditch, collecting samples. Since we're looking at metals in really small concentrations, we're mindful about making sure our equipment doesn't contaminate our work. We use special sample collection bottles lined with Teflon to collect samples at the right depth, plus a non-metal line made of Kevlar to hoist the equipment in and out of the water. On board, we also set up an isolated bench with HEPA filtration to package samples and limit contamination. Once we have the samples and return to the dock, we'll take them to the lab for analysis. Oh no, not this lab. We're actually going to take them to Bess at Colby College to be analyzed.
Thanks, Ben. All right, so now that we have our water sample, what do we actually do? Well, we measure out a small amount of volcanic ash. We actually do that 3 separate times, and we make these little packets that allow us to take the ash over to the hood. In the hood, we then carefully tap that ash onto a filter. Then we run the water through the filter, and some of the metals will actually get washed off by the water. So by doing this little experiment, we can then measure the solubility of different kinds of metals like iron in the water using a mass spectrometer. And ultimately, this will help us understand the geochemistry of ash from different volcanoes and how that ash might impact the ocean ecosystem and specifically the phytoplankton communities that rely on ash for those metals.
By better understanding volcanic eruptions and phytoplankton blooms, we can feed people, grow economies, and help fish and whales thrive. Thanks for watching.